Here's why I turned to musicians and not other writers when I needed some guidance when I was writing my first book, A Paper Orchestra. So I'm a professional sitcom writer, and I get paid making people laugh. But when I was writing this book, I didn't want people to think it was written by a sitcom writer. I didn't want them to think, oh, this is just a sitcom in print. I wanted to do something a little deeper than that. I know how to make people laugh, but what I really wanted to do was move people emotionally, and so that they saw themselves in my words and kind of felt the same thing I was feeling. That was the goal. And I didn't turn to other writers to get notes. And I know many of them, some fantastic writers whose work I respect, but I was just worried that they may inadvertently discourage me from writing what I wanted to write. And so I didn't want to turn to them. So I looked for help from musicians, because what I find so appealing about music is that music has two powerful tools to make people feel something. First, there's the lyrics. When Bonnie Raitt sings, "I Can't Make You Love Me," like, oh man, like that's a lyric, right? But then they also have the melody. And so half the time you don't even understand what the lyrics are, and yet you're still moved. You might be moved to tears. You may be moved to get up and dance. So music is so powerful. Like, I'm envious in that way. So I just started watching a lot of videos from musicians, and there's three that stood out to me. One was Roland Orzabal from Tears for Fears. And when he was describing songs from The Big Chair, which is like an amazing album, he said the problem with that album was they called it Songs from The Big Chair because it was a bunch of songs. He didn't feel like it was part of a collection. He didn't feel like they necessarily went together. And it's a great album, but that's, in his mind, I guess he felt it fell short in some respect. I don't agree with that at all, but it made me think, okay, so maybe writing a collection is something better than just writing a bunch of songs. And so my book is a bunch of short stories, and then I had to reevaluate. Okay, I had to make sure that the stories belonged together. It was part of a collection. So immediately I tossed out some of the stories that I felt like didn't really belong with the others, and I thought that was helpful. Then I watched a very it's a famous video by David Bowie where he talks about what art is, and he describes it as reaching into yourself and figuring out yourself and expressing it in a way so that you better understand yourself and the world around you. And that might be art. And then when you wade into water that's a little too deep to stand in, when you're uncomfortable, then you might be on the verge of doing something great. And so I was like, okay, good, because I feel like I'm wading into something that's very uncomfortable. I'm writing something I've never really done before, and it felt very weird. And I was like, the whole time I'm like, am I doing it right? Because I was inspired to do this by, like, I love the work of David Sedaris. I think he writes beautifully. Yeah, I don't read anything he writes, but as I was writing my stories, it's not like him. It's not like his work. And the whole time I'm like, am I doing it right? It feels like I'm not doing it right because it's not what he's doing, and he's doing it right. But then I watched a video by Pharrell, and I guess he was like critiquing a bunch of young musicians and helping them, with their music. And he got to this one young woman, and he said, "You did it. I have no notes for you because what you wrote is so uniquely you and so powerfully you. You did it. Done. That's so impressive." And he was doing more than just giving her permission to be herself. He was saying, no, you have to be yourself. And so that kind of made me feel a little bit better about what I was doing and feel a little bit less insecure about, like, am I doing it right or doing it wrong? The book is called A Paper Orchestra. You can get it on my website, michaeljamin.com. Or you can find it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, or the audiobook on Audible and stuff like that. Is it art? I don't know. That's for you to figure out. You get to decide that. I can't decide that. But that was what I intended to do. So, I don't know. Leave it to the musicians. Thank you, musicians.